Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to day 4 of Sound and Vision. I am Jandrisch. I am a music supervisor at Instinct Entertainment. I am also the producer of this event, Sound and Vision. Thank you all for coming. I cannot believe that we are on day 4 already. This is completely wild to me. We had the vision of doing this back in June or July, and here we are. We've been receiving a lot of incredible feedback from you guys and gals for attending. So thank you so much for taking the time to participate. I see a lot of people from around the globe in the chat. Thank you for being so engaged in the chat. We really appreciate it. Also, I want to let you know that you come back tomorrow. Make sure to come back tomorrow because it's our final day of this sync conference. We will be going behind the scenes of the recent film, The Kid Detective, starring Adam Brody. It's going to be incredibly cool. I'm kind of geeking out about it, to be totally honest. We're also going to have a keynote speaking panel with filmmaker, director, actor Charles Officer. So you can go to soundandvisioncanada.com to register for tomorrow's panels. Today, however, we have 2 awesome panels as well. A day in the life of TV. So we're going behind the scenes of the new Netflix series, Tiny Pretty Things, followed by a keynote speaking panel with our Guild president, Michael Perlmutter, and Emmy-nominated composer, Amanda Jones. So stick around for that because it's going to be incredible. A reminder that each day has 1 Zoom link. So if you registered for today's keynote speaking panel with Amanda Jones, you can simply stay on. And same goes for tomorrow. So before I introduce the next panel, or the first panel, I should say, and our moderator, I do want to thank our sponsors once again. Huge thank you to Third Side Music, Simba, Arts and Crafts, Cadence, and High Priestess Publishing. We, as the Canadian Guild, could not have put this event on without them, like literally. So you have them to thank. Also, I want to thank Montgomery Sound. Liam and Daniel have been incredibly amazing at helping make this event run smoothly. So thanks to them, as well as Warren Bray for his help with the awesome intermission video slides, and RichKidd for providing us the music. Also, if you've been partaking in these panels, you're already familiar with the fact that we've partnered with 2 incredible Canadian charities, the first being Black Youth Helpline and the second being Black Mental Health Canada. If this is your first time attending a panel, we're asking attendees to donate whatever they can to the charity of their choice, whether it be $2 or $5 a panel. You can make donations directly at their website, which I will drop in the chat for you now. Okay, now on to the first panel of the day. I'm really excited about this one. A day in the life of TV, Tiny Pretty Things. Our moderator, who I'm going to quickly bring in. It's very hard to produce this event and also talk at the same time, so please forgive me. I'm going to bring in our moderator. She is the Guild of Music Supervisors Vice President, Natasha Duprey. She's also one of the music supervisors on Tiny Pretty Things. She also really loves vodka and Fresca, I found out, as well as nachos for many meals. So I've learned that recently. Since 2003, Vancouver-based Natasha Duprey has supervised hundreds of hours of episodic television, including the series The Terror, The L Word, Continuum, The Order, and Unspeakable. She has worked on a host of MOWs, national ad campaigns, feature films such as Frankie and Alice, which garnered Halle Berry a Golden Globe nomination, and documentaries including I Am Johnny Cash, the 4-part epic series Punk, and the 2020 Sundance Grand Jury Prize winner Boys State. Natasha is currently working on the series The Astronauts, Family Law, Snowpiercer, and Tall Boys. Without further ado, take it away, Natasha. I will bring the panelists in now too.
Thank you very much. I do like Fresca and vodka. I just discovered it because I had vodka and I only had Fresca, and it's, you know, a pandemic time, so you take what you can get. I didn't eat any nachos today, but I'm planning on having tachos for dinner, which is tater tot nachos. Anyhow, enough about me. A little housekeeping before we start again. Just a reminder, we do have the 2 amazing charities we've partnered with, Black Youth Helpline and Black Mental Health Canada. Links to both of the charities are in the chat. And as Jandrisch said, we do recommend just like $2 to $5 donation per panel. I don't know about you, but I'm not spending a lot of money right now. So If you can, it would be awesome to donate. We have a really great panel today of a show that is very close to my heart as the co-music supervisor. It's Tiny Pretty Things we're going to be talking about. Tiny Pretty Things premieres on Netflix on December 14th. It's going to be your new favorite series. You're going to binge watch it and then watch it again. It's all the drama of a ballet school in Chicago. Today we've got the showrunner, Michael. We've got the co-music supervisor, Scott. We've got one of the picture editors, Duncan, and we have the composer, James. And we're going to kind of break down from start to finish how we deal with music on a TV series. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, and then we're going to show the trailer, which is going to blow your mind. So let's start with Michael. Michael, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Hi, it's so great to see everyone on here, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us today. This is our first. This is the first time any of us have really publicly discussed the show. The trailer just dropped on Monday. So we couldn't even tell people when the show was dropping until then. So I think this is a really exciting way to kind of launch the promotion of this new series. Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I'm a writer and a showrunner. I've been doing it for about 20 years. This project with Netflix has been probably the happiest of my career so far. And I'm very, very excited for the world to see it and for you guys all to get a sneak peek of it.
Awesome, thank you. Scott, are you there? My co-music supervisor. You want to say something about yourself, Scott? Do we have Scott?
Doesn't seem like we do.
He is unmuted, but we don't have audio.
Scott. We can go back to him. Duncan, are you there? Do you want to tell us about yourself? No, Duncan.
There we go. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Duncan Christie. I'm a picture editor, and I cut 4 episodes of this show, Tiny Pretty Things. I'm also a musician, and so this show was particularly enjoyable for me because there was so much awesome music, and music was such a big part of it. I've been cutting for about 20 years. I started in documentary, did a lot of sort of films and some comedy stuff, and have not recently, but I've then moved into drama in the last decade or so. So yeah, and I had an absolute blast working on the show, and looking forward to discussing all things music with it.
Awesome. Scott, are you there now? You're muted, I think. Oh, technology.
Scott, do you want to try coming back in the call? We'll see if that helps.
Yeah, let's go to James in the meantime. Mr. Jandrisch, my pal, tell us about yourself. Oh, you're muted too. What is going on, technology?
You have to.
Am I all good now? Am I happening now?
Yeah.
Yes.
But can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. I'm James. I've been a full-time composer for about 20 years, just like everybody else. And fortunately, I'm also wearing a black top, just like everybody else, which is like a requirement today, which is, really, really, really good. Started my career doing the band thing. I learned how to play a lot of instruments, and just enough to get by. And as it turns out, it really helped my composing career. And everybody that I played in the band with really hated me. So that's the best way I could do it, was to be a film composer. So I wouldn't have to deal with anyone except for, the odd people in a film now and then. But anyways, yeah, this show is, I feel it's my best work yet. And I am just so honored to be part of it, and truly mean that. And I'm dying for the world to see it. It's for me, it really, really, really was challenging, and humbled to be a part of this.
Thanks, James. I think, James, you're the composer that I worked with when I first started being a music supervisor.
Yeah, actually, I still remember the dress that you had on when you came in. Yeah, it was like this floral thing, and it's like, oh, that's nice. That's nice. She's in.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Scott, are you receiving now? Still not working?
He's re-entering, but I don't know. He could see us. Oh,
There he is!
Oh, yay.
Yeah, baby!
He knows how to make a difference.
Scott, tell us about yourself for 4 seconds before we watch our beautiful trailer.
Seconds. Yes, I'm one of the co-music supervisors, and I come.
I don't think it's working. I think we're having technical problems. Let's watch the trailer, and hopefully we can get it worked out when we get back. But Jandrisch, will you cue up our beautiful trailer so we can all watch it?
Happening now.
If a ballerina falls hard and nobody's there to catch her, does she still make a sound?
Nevaeh, Chicago called.
They said they didn't want me.
Something changed their mind.
Shall we begin? Again from the top.
Welcome, our newest arrival, to the Archer School of Ballet.
Dancing in Cassie Shore's footsteps.
Who's Cassie Shore?
One-star student suffered a fateful misstep.
Misstep. She fell 4 stories.
He's amazing.
Yeah, if you're hot for psychos, you ask me, he pushed her.
This isn't your world, little rat. Knowing the steps doesn't mean you belong.
You best believe I'm coming for you.
There are things that you do not know about this place. Things I've seen.
You think I pushed her? Like all the others?
There is something wrong with that place.
That is not my choreography.
Ballet is no place for redemption.
You have only one thing to do. That is to dance better than anyone else.
I can find the tiny, pretty things you love and tear their wings off.
Have a mighty fall.
So cool.
Yeehaw!
Right, everyone's lost their minds now. So there's the trailer of the show we've all been working on for so long. And now I kind of want to start with Michael, go to Scott, go to Duncan, and go to James, and kind of talk about how music and TV shows work together. So, Scott, are you here to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I'm one of the co-music supervisors in the show. I come from a classical music background as a singer and a performer, and have transitioned into working in the music licensing industry for years here in LA, and now I'm a music supervisor for TV and film.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Michael, let's start with you in the hot seat. So Tiny Pretty Things was a book and then became a series. And I know you want to get into the music part pretty fast, but can you talk a little bit about how a book becomes a series, and how and when you get involved, and how the kind of process starts before you get to the music part?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, it's different in different projects. You know, some underlying material, they call it IP now, intellectual property. You know, it can be a nonfiction piece, it can be a magazine article or a novel. Sometimes it sort of comes sort of on a silver platter. You can totally see how it's going to be a series that'll run forever and kind of traverse to a new medium. And sometimes you kind of have to dig into it more, find the spirit of the thing, and figure out how to rebuild it so that it will work as a successful series, that it will, you know, run a long time. They're very different. They're very different designs. A novel and what was designed to be a long-running series. And in the case of Tiny Pretty Things, I was working with Insurrection Media, and they had been sending me a variety of novels to look at. Most of them kind of weren't up my alley. A lot of kind of dystopian future, kind of Hunger Gamesian sort of things, which seemed interesting, but they just weren't kind of the sort of thing I wanted to do. And there was something about Tiny Pretty Things that really grabbed me. I had worked in my 20s in the world of dance, running a summer dance festival in Victoria and a summer dance school. I knew the world. I obviously came from a performing arts background, and I felt like there was something about the truth of the book and the just the central milieu of an elite ballet academy that was interesting to me. And so I sort of just took really the kind of heart of the book and reimagined it for something that I felt would sell in the marketplace and also go on to great success. And sometimes, like I say, sometimes it's a much more straightforward process. This one, I think fans of the book will find some similarities in the storytelling, but I think mostly, to be honest, it's going to be in the kind of heart of the show is sort of similar to what we find in the novel.
A lot of purists with novels get upset when you don't follow the storyline exactly. Were you kind of cognizant of that when you were writing?
I was. I mean, I was, and I felt like I felt like I needed, my first responsibility was to create something that would succeed and draw a large audience, which is kind of connected. Obviously, if you don't have a big audience, you won't do well. And so it's about amplifying stakes. It's about, in the case, and you know, the authors themselves said, you know, we wanted to talk about young men as well as young women. We wanted to talk about adults, and it was just the constraints of the novel were such that, you know, you can only tell so many stories, and you just have so much bigger of a canvas. So I'll be interested in that conversation. I hope that fans of the book feel like they're seeing what they love about the book, but also recognizing that it needs a kind of amplification and a kind of just a broadening to have the kind of relationships and characters that you'll want to watch for 5 seasons, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I've been looking at the comments on the YouTube link for the promo, and a lot of people are saying like, they better stick to this story, and then arguing about how they don't need to stick to this story. So certainly, you know.
I think right now the conversation is about that because they don't know what the stories are. And so I would just say, trust, wait and see, and I think that people will be very pleased. But it is we're in that awkward position where really the full extent of the conversation is based on that 90-second trailer, which I'm so excited about. But of course, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of this, as you know, the storytelling that we're about to share with the world.
Yeah, and I do love it that everyone has their ideas about where the story arc's going to go based on the trailer. So, but it's awesome.
Right? It's so tempting to engage, and but I'm just waiting for people to see it unfold.
So let's get into the music now. When you're writing a script, how early on do you start thinking about music, and do you ever put songs specifically in the script? And you know what I'm talking about probably here. And when that happens, how often does that song that you put in the script actually become in the final version of the show?
Good questions. Well, I used to I think about music right from the beginning. I usually write to music, and I'm trying to kind of think about the kind of sonic world that a show will be in. When I started creating series, and in fact, the show that we worked on the first time we worked together, Natasha and James for that matter, the early episodes had specific songs written in, and I'm pretty sure that 0% of those made the cut. And what I've just found is partly, it's sort of like, there's a rule in screenwriting, like don't move the camera around, don't tell the director how to move a camera. And I think in the same way, the rule would be don't tell a music supervisor what the best song is for this scene. We don't know yet. We honestly don't know. I mean, that's the beauty of when you come in as a music supervisor. In most cases, it's once things have been, and we'll talk about how TPT was different in some ways, but it's after things have been shot, you know what the world is. And so I find it sometimes a bit, it's just intrusive to write, this is the song that sort of pops in at this moment. Also, by the time the show's made, let alone airs, your great, third-rate idea, because, what do I know? It's already feels out of date. So it's just never going to be the song. What I will do is two things. One is that I will sometimes, it's usually at the end of a scene, I will say music up as, and it'll be like the last moment of the scene. And then it's in the next 4 or 5 scenes, say, that I'll say music continues as, and it's usually like it's a montage, and it's sort of signifying, it's not that when I don't talk about music, I expect there to be no music. This is when it's sort of cueing production that this is a big song. This is a big get. Music is going to need to tell the story here for us. And it's, usually a time when I'm condensing scenes and looking for a song to kind of hold a sequence together. And the second thing is that I do rarely, I put in a song that's extremely specific. And the one example would be when we used Hosier in Tiny Pretty Things, where I'm actually writing the lines of the lyrics into the sequence because it's that important. And so that serves two things. One is to really unpack how the lyrics are expected to play against picture. And in the case of a big swing song like that, it becomes a resource for you when you're going to the publishers, when they say, let me see, before we agree, you can just clip out those 3 pages and show them what is going to happen so that they can greenlight that easily. I think we did it only once in our last show together, the Bletchley Circle San Francisco, and that was for Guy Garvey singing I Only Have Eyes for You, which James arranged and produced. And that again was about how the piece is going to build against the lyrics. So, but I'm talking like, I'd say like that's 2 times in 2 seasons of different shows. So it's pretty rare that it has to be that specific. I'm doing a new project now where, of all things, it's an Anita Bryant song. Welcome to My World, I think it's called. And it does the same thing where I'm really interested in how the lyrics play against the sequence. But those are pretty few and far between in my case, because just to end by circling back to the beginning, I think it's better to not hamstring your guys' work. Now, there's a conversation to be had about the style of the stuff when we get into collaborating, but I don't think the place to do that is usually the script.
Yeah, and that Hosier song was the first song that we cleared for the whole series. So, there's and the reason we did as well so early is because of what I'm going to discuss with Scott now, is that we had 2 different aspects to the show as far as music clearances go. One is there's on-camera dance performances that choreographers need to get the music ahead of time, choreograph the dances. We have to have playback on set. We've got to lock those songs in ahead of time. Most shows, we're not locking songs in until after we're already editing. So Scott, your turn now. Can you talk a little bit about how we tackle the difference between the on-camera dance performances and the post-production music? And and also kind of maybe talk a little bit about how it was working with a choreographer.
Sure. I'll maybe start with the post-production stuff. I think, as soon as we read the scripts, I think we both, Natasha and I, could see that it was a youthful show. It was juicy, with a sort of sophisticated, dark edge to it. So I think both of us were excited by the scripts, and we immediately set to thinking of artists that came to mind that could fit into that world. And then we, even prior to the shoot, were reaching out to artists that we thought could be a good fit for the show, reaching out to labels, music licensing companies, in search of those kind of emerging artists, and any unreleased material that we could find that would really reflect the vitality and youthfulness of the show, and hopefully allow the viewers to have a sense of discovery where they're going to discover their new favorite artist when a song comes on, by hitting Shazam. And so even prior to the shoot, we were sort of amassing bins of things that could work potentially. And of course, as the process went on, we did very specific searches to fill the needs for various scenes, but we were well prepared and sort of well stocked with as many options as we could find there. And in terms of the choreography, there were sort of two different types of scenarios. There are several sequences that of dancers, and those in this series set to contemporary cues. So like a pop song, a lyrical ballad will be the cue for a love duet, or we have some edgy hip hop that is for when a character's letting off some steam after a long day of rehearsals in the pressure cooker that is the Archer Ballet Academy. And for those, the approach was slightly different. We went into those not with the knowledge that cue actually might change in post, but you and I, Natasha and I, would put together sort of a list of options that we felt could meet the tone of the scene and the tempo that was required. And we would send a list of options to our head choreographer, Jennifer Nichols. And my understanding is that Jennifer would actually take the songs the options that we sent and play them for the actor, dancer who was going to be performing the scene. And there was we wanted to see as what the actor and the dancer was responding to the most in those options, so that they could deliver their best performance on camera on the day of shooting. So it was interesting that the actors and dancers actually played a role sometimes in that decision for the day of shooting. And I think by and large, most of those cues stuck. I think because the movement was so intrinsic and came out of the music on set on the day of shooting and everyone liked the cues, so most of those stuck. And it was interesting for me as well, something which I didn't expect. I was lucky enough to be in Toronto for the shoot and to be on the set and to meet the actors and to talk to them about, what music they were listening to and, what they were using to unwind after a long day of shooting or whatever. And that was sort of a good barometer for me of what types of artists and music might work for the show, with our fabulous young cast, just to sort of take the temperature of what was cool to them. And I remember at one point, most of the cast went to see a concert of a pop duo in Toronto, a Canadian pop duo. They were performing in Toronto, Elijah Woods and Jamie Fine. And they went to see this concert and sort of struck up a friendship with the band. And we ended up being able to get one of their cues into the show. And because of that friendship, they ended up coming to the wrap party. And that was sort of a nice full circle moment as a music supervisor to sort of be spontaneous and be open to that, if it's available to you, I think, as a supervisor, and if you can have that interaction with the cast and be on the set, it allows you can sort of pull in all this other information and use it to inform your choices for the show. And regarding the larger ensemble choreographed scenes, that was a different story. As you mentioned, we had to be, it was imperative that we clear the music before, so that the music that the choreography was being set to, the recordings would be the same that were used in the final mix. And so for those larger ensemble things, we had sort of 3 large ballets. The first was quite simple, from obviously the students in the script are rehearsing, preparing to audition for The Sleeping Beauty. So that was just a matter of finding a recording of Tchaikovsky's ballet score, The Sleeping Beauty, from which he wrote in 1890, that would, where the tempi were suitable for the choreographer. And then the 2 other cases were, the 2 other ballets, it was a slightly more involved process. For one of them, we wanted to sort of evoke turn of the century England. And we needed a piece that could sort of play over many episodes, but also have enough variety and texture to sort of hit all the beats of the story. And I ended up thinking of a piece by Benjamin Britten, who wrote a piece for string orchestra called Variations on a Theme of Frank Bridge. And that ended up working very nicely because each variation provided us with the variety we needed to hit the beats of the story. But each variation was based on the same melodic theme. So there was a sense of familiarity when the music came back every time. Hopefully for the viewer, there will be that sort of a bell will go off and they'll realize, oh yes, they're still rehearsing this ballet. From there, the third and final one that was quite involved. We wanted to find a more contemporary expression of ballet music and to acknowledge that it's not just some sort of museum art form performing this with old classical music, and people are still writing ballet music. Composers are still composing for the ballet, and so I was delighted to find a ballet score by Nicole Lisée, who is a Quebec composer, and she was commissioned by Ballet BC and the National Arts Centre Orchestra to write a ballet piece called Keep Driving, I'm Dreaming. And she, in that piece, she combined sort of traditional orchestral writing with like edgy electronics. So it was the perfect sort of fit for that darker, sophisticated edge of in our show, and really helped to tell the story as the suspicions mount and the ongoing investigation takes over the Ballet Academy. So I was really delighted to be able to get sort of ballet music that everything from 1890 to something that was written 4 or 5 years ago, and as well as all kinds of cool contemporary cues. And I think, it was always, just to sum it up, it was always with the choreographers, it was always a back and forth. So we had to find something that production and we felt suited the tone and told the story, but also something that the choreographers were excited about setting movement to, that had enough rhythmic impulse and tonal texture. And that was fascinating to see how the choreographers took the music and isolated the sections of these larger pieces and set the choreography on those moments.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a different kind of show than music supervisors usually work on because of all that. And I will say, I have never been a co-music supervisor with anyone before, but I never want to be a co-music supervisor with anyone except you ever again, because you were so great. And also, you have this knowledge of the classical music world that most music supervisors like me, I know all about hip hop and rock and everything. It was just like a pretty important part of the whole puzzle, and something, there's not a lot of shows where you have classical and hip hop and pop and rock and it's all just flowing and working together. So Nicole Lise is the answer to people on chat. All right, Duncan, are you ready? I just...
Hi. Yes, I am. I had to unmute myself.
I discovered a few days ago that Duncan was in a band that I licensed to the L Word 8,000 years ago. So, you know, the relationship between music supervisors and composers and editors is a pretty interesting one because we work really closely together, even though from the outside world, you wouldn't think those two would mesh so much. And my favorite editors, and James will probably agree, are the most musical editors are my favorite editors. And a lot of editors are musicians.
Right.
So I guess I wanted you to kind of talk about how music and editing works for you. When do you start the process of putting music into your cuts? And does cutting to specific songs or score change how you cut to start?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, first of all, being a musician, like people often ask me how I got into editing, and I kind of, I think that basically it's because I'm a musician. I was doing electronic music in the 90s, and so I was playing with drum machines and stuff. And so then getting into film school, I was definitely like in the sort of the creative realm of filmmaking, and that was kind of like my passion and what I wanted to pursue. And so editing is kind of like the blending of the creative and the technical. Being able to use editing equipment is kind of like a drum machine. You're building shots to tell a story, just like you would build, drums to make a beat, if that makes sense. And so it's kind of part and parcel of the same sort of creative flow, I guess, is thinking about how it's going to sound. Yeah, I mean, I'll use music right off the bat if I can. I was fortunate. I mean, you guys put together so many great songs like before I even got involved. So having these bins, this kind of grab bag of amazing material to use in the show was such a treat. And like Michael was saying about writing in music up in the script, that was so sort of helpful because it would tell the director that, okay, this moment, these next few scenes are sort of a montage, and so they would shoot them a certain way, and then finding the right track for those moments would kind of elevate it and make it all one beautiful thing. Yeah, does that sort of I think I'm a bit nervous. It's like I'm used to I can picture people out there, but I can't see them, so it's kind of freaking me out.
It's weird. It's weird just talking to your computer.
Yeah, totally.
I kind of feel like maybe you've lost your mind, but do you notice a difference between working with the music supervisor or doing a show where there isn't any music? Or have you ever worked on a show where there wasn't any source music?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm cutting a show right now that music is such a backseat priority. Like Tiny Pretty Things was such a treat because as an editor, it has that extra element that you can play with. It's not just like two people in a room talking. There's a whole other layer, which is the music. So I guess in that sense, yeah, it's way more involved on a show like this with you guys. And being able to just, we hadn't really met at all until we did our sort of test call last week. But, I would be cutting a scene and trying different tracks, and there's something that just wasn't quite working. And so I would just fire off an email saying, can you guys send me some more options for this thing? I'm thinking something a bit faster or something a bit more retro or something. And then within an hour, I'd have, 8 more tracks to sort of choose from. And suddenly, like, boom, there's that golden track that elevates the scene and makes it a perfect thing.
Do you have songs or score that you have in your own arsenal that you like to cut to?
Yeah, like I'd say just the just sort of temp score kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess that's another aspect, is that there's the score, and then there's the song. So in a case like this show, I wouldn't really bring in my own songs because you guys had that totally covered. There was like a plethora of amazing tracks to choose from at all times. But yeah, for the score stuff, actually on this, we ended up having some of James's music as a sort of a temp thing that we could use, which was helpful. But yeah, I've got a few bins of other shows or other soundtracks or whatever that you just bring in as placeholder for mood, really. Yeah, just sort of a signpost saying it should kind of feel like this a little bit.
I do find that in the first season of a show, everybody's trying to kind of get the flavor of the show, and we're trying to get the musical flavor, and that a lot of times, if you don't have a composer like James that's composing and giving you composed score that's going to be the score of the show for you to cut to, you're kind of Thomas Newman here. And
Totally.
And this and that. There's just, at all the temp scores, I hear the same scores from hip TV shows all the time. So second season will be a lot easier, right?
Right. Well, I mean, on most shows it is like that. There's always this like complete relearning of the whole process almost, where having to go through all the temp sounds and then the network's getting involved, going, I don't know about this and blah blah blah. And it just, whereas I don't know, it didn't feel like that on this show. It felt like you guys had it sort of nailed from the start. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what it felt like. So it was almost like not an issue. We had a good sense of how it should go from the start, I think, which was such an amazing relief.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think, it's a bunch of people that have worked together before, but also because of what we were just talking about, how we had to start thinking about the musicals vibe of the show while shooting, and James had to think about that as well, which we'll get on to too. A lot of times we just watch locked cuts, and then it's like, now figure out the music, and we were kind of doing it all the way along, and I think that's why it worked out so well. Right.
And and another sort of answer to one of your questions, like being able to cut to the songs that you can actually use in the final mix is it just makes it that much better, because you'll create a sequence and it's the perfect thing, and then it'll suddenly get broken when you have to swap out the track, and everybody's kind of just a little bit bummed about it, or it's just like suddenly feels lukewarm because doesn't capture that, whatever that essence, that feeling of having the right song in there from the start. So it made a huge difference.
Yeah, even when I'm watching shows that I didn't work on, I will know that the editor did not cut.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you can see it a mile away, and often it's like one of the, my biggest sort of I call it the bane of my existence, professionally, is being in a mix, watching the show, watching the scene, and thinking, like, I would have cut it differently if I had known that was the song they were going to use. And that's what I talk about. Sometimes there's some broken telephone within post-production. It's that right there. It's like the editing to music, it has to end up being that music, otherwise you would edit it differently. So I understand that sometimes that can't happen because of clearances and or someone network at the end wanting to swap it out for whatever reason, but in an ideal world, you're cutting with the music from the start.
Absolutely. It makes us both look so much better when it's
totally
beautiful, seamless thing. But thanks, Duncan. Now let's put James on the hot seat. James, Jandrisch.
Yo, sup?
So James, I think we've done 6 series together, maybe a lot.
37, 40-ish. Yeah, no, we've known each other forever. As a matter of fact, we even shared office space. So like I should let everybody know, like, there's 2 things that are really cool about Natasha. One, she dresses cats extremely well. Like, it's unbelievable. The second thing, she's like got a certain thing with vacuuming. It was incredible. Like, whenever I went in the studio, if Ella came in with like wet boots.
I'm a crazy person that just
No, you are a crazy person. That's a requirement of a music supervisor. You have to be half crazy, and that's part of the deal, right? But no, nonetheless, yeah, we've known each other for a long time, and on this series, that was huge, because actually everybody, I've known Michael for so long, and it's kind of like, I guess what Duncan was saying was about, that level of trust and that comfort. You don't feel that there is like a wall between departments. There's a wall between music supervision. There's a wall between composing. There's a wall between editing. It's seamless. It goes back and forth, and nobody's afraid to give their thoughts and their expertise, right? And that is where great art comes from, and you're constantly trying to push it. And, if you go too far, they'll say, yeah, don't go there, but you can try that, and that's the awesome part about this. Yeah.
Question.
Okay.
You have to create the whole sound of a series. Now, where does it start? Does it start at the script? Does it start when you see the cuts? Does it start at conversations? And how do you kind of like come up with the sound that will be the sound of the show?
Oh, that's a good question. So I take no, I'm not going to go there. So basically, it starts with the concept. I mean, this show was originally brought to me by Michael, and Michael and I have a great bond. And he started kind of put the thought in the seed in my head of what he was kind of looking for, his vision, I guess you could say, which, as you'll find out, is unbelievable. But in general, I kind of look at the technical requirements first, and what I can bring to the table in those requirements. One of the things I like to hope I excel at is I try to push myself into all styles and genres as best as I can, and try to push myself to learn something new that I wouldn't do normally, and go out on the edge. And I think I like to hope that's what people like about my music, is that it seems to be on the other side of normal. I'm always looking for something that will tickle your cortex in that respect. But in this show, there were certain requirements, and the first one being, like the classical music side, as so Scott so eloquently said it, they've been together, classical music and ballet, for centuries. That's going to be there no matter what it's going to be, and that's why we were so lucky to have Scott aboard on this. So as far as the score was concerned, I didn't know it was necessarily going to be that, but it certainly had to be complementary to that, and certainly had to respect that. So that was one area that was a requirement. The other requirement was, the young adult factor, and that was an interesting process for me. One of the first things I did actually on this show is, I just bought this like 30-year-old modular synthesizer with tubes and wires and stuff and knobs and things like that. It was completely analog. It was nuts. It like took up half my studio. It was just something straight out of a science fiction movie, and it was amazing. The coolest thing about it was, one of the things that is unfortunate about today is that music is a very visual response using a computer, and you stop listening. And the cool thing about this process was it was very, very, intimate. It was touching. You were turning knobs. It's like, oh, what does this do? Oh, that's awesome. And as a result, you started listening with your ears again, and you started really feeling that. And, my son walked in and was like, what the hell is that thing? And I found, just like everything with my kids, is that they're fascinated with the vintage right now. And so I quickly realized that kind of vintage sound was part of the puzzle, I guess you could say. And then the other aspect was, I know a lot of dancers. As a matter of fact, I dated a lot of dancers too. So, which is a tough thing sometimes, believe you me. But the interesting thing was, one of my good friends, her playlist was all over the place. She'd be listening to Tchaikovsky, she'd be listening to, whatever, and she'd be listening to Kanye at the same time, right? So like it was all over the place. And so there was clearly a fusion going on here that I had to try to make. And that was a real challenge. So I started with the analog with some synths, added some I play cello and viola. I tried that from a very edgy, dirty kind of side of things, and then I said, okay, let's throw in some traditional instruments like percussion and guitar, and then added an orchestra on top of that, and all of a sudden it kind of created a sound that was malleable, and which was another huge requirement, and would be complementary to that whole place that existed in ballet for centuries. And suddenly I realized that the sound that I came up with was what kids would be using, an aspiring dancer would be listening to, much of what Scott was talking about when he was speaking to the actors. So that was certainly a huge part of the sound. And the rest was just throwing up things against the wall and thinking, is it going to stick or not? And again, unbelievable support from everyone on this production to say, I love it or I hate it, and if it didn't work, I was more than happy to get back at it. So there you go.
Love that. I love that you're, as a composer, thinking of sounds as fitting a particular demographic the same way we're thinking of songs fitting a particular demographic. Because of course, just if a score works, you don't even know it's happening. That's a cool thing. I've said this before. Once you come up with, first off, like the bar in the show is so damn high. I mean, like our bloody Duncan is, he's got a digital drum kit in there. I'm going to have to keep up with that. And we're talking about Britain. I got to get to the level of Benjamin Britten. It's like, it's a serious bar to get to, right? So, but once you get to a point where you can see that the sound is working, it starts to write itself, and it actually flows through you, as opposed to you trying to think about what's happening, because the cuts are there, the photography is there, the lighting's there, the set design is there, man. Just wait till you see the sets on this thing. It's insane, right? So it all starts to write itself essentially.
And you would also be wanting to know, before you sat down to compose, you would be like, is that, like, you knew you had a cue at this point, and then the cue before that might have been a needle drop.
Yeah.
Like, is that certain, like, is that a for sure? Are we locked?
Yeah.
Because
we locked in that, yeah.
Natasha and Scott were, we would almost always be able to say yes. So you were also being able to, it was like a conversation where, like, a song would hand off to score, would hand off to song again. And that, I think, just the way you thought about it so holistically, I think that's a great example of the way that we were all having a kind of creative conversation from the very beginning of the story.
That was another huge requirement of the show, is that because the source was so good, that the score had to seamlessly transition, and then sometimes even augment what that was there, because sometimes it'd be in a big dance thing, and you needed a little bit more push, and needed a little bit of intro that had to meld with it. And so part of the things that I love to do is produce music, and this was on every single cue that I had to write. It had to be as good as the source. Well, believe me, nothing was as good as the source did, but it had to be at the same level, and that was a challenge.
Also, I think what we were just saying with Duncan about how when you watch a scene that wasn't cut to that music, it really bumps. It also bumps for me when you have score buffering a song, and it doesn't you can tell that the score was created before the song was cleared and picked, and so it's kind of like we're in one key and now we're in a song, and now we're just in the score and another key.
Yeah, no, it was a great thing to have the luxury of knowing, put it to you that way. And it also informed the sound of the score, by all means. I would do something that would tickle me in that song, and and that's maybe something we can talk about is maybe the spotting session aspect of things. You guys know that I don't like to try to spot a show before I've seen it, because I lose the element of surprise as a viewer, and how music can kind of dictate that. But perhaps I can throw a question on you, Natasha and Scott. If there was a spot for a song that wasn't temped, or first time you see a cut, and it's something that you can acquire, where does your brain go to say, what bin do I go to here? What are your requirements in that vein?
Well, I'll let Scott answer too, but if you could see my iTunes playlist, you would know. Because, we just kind of, music supervisors' brains are constantly making lists and bins and playlists of different themes and songs, cognizant of how much those songs are going to cost. And so, I'll let Scott say some stuff too, but Scott and I really worked together to put together this musical sound of the show before we were even at the point where we were sending songs off. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think organization is key in terms of, I just had folders and things divided by genre and I would just pull things as ideas came in and throw them on playlists. So I had them, and then so immediately when we had a need to fill, I could sort of go, and if there wasn't something there, it would spark an idea for me to research something else, or there'd be a reference that would lead me in another direction. But it's really strange how it happens. It's partly just your brain just starts working and flipping through all its folders and
the automatic Rolodex.
But the chain, if you could look back at the internet pages that are visited in the search to find something, it's fascinating to see how you get from one thing to another. And
interesting.
Final
you guys were really fast too, and that was such a great thing. I would have new tracks within an hour, and it would allow me to kind of keep going in the same headspace and not sort of table it and come back to it later.
Well, that's the thing about having two music supervisors too.
Yeah.
We'd get an email, and then Scott and I would just email each other, who's going to do this?
Right.
So it was just always and I'm a proponent of if you can do something, do it immediately, no procrastination and no moral. So we've got a little time for some Q&A. So I'm looking at the questions right now. There's a lot of questions about what's going to happen romantically with some of the people that we know. Will Nevaeh or Oren, what's happening with them romantically? We're not going to tell you any of that.
Yeah, if we tell you, we'd have to kill you.
Does the series lend itself to more than one season? That's a question. But
absolutely, it's designed for more than one season.
17 seasons, really.
And every reason to expect we'll get them.
Here's a good question. Do each of you have a favorite musical moment in the show, whether it's score or source? Anyone? You have to remember all the
I'll start with a few. The Hosier moment is a peak moment for me, because I think that everything came together so beautifully. There's a montage in episode 8, without giving away story, but it involves virtually the whole cast. And what's the piece of music that we use in the hospital?
Now you're going to make us try to...
Yeah. If you don't get this, you're fired, by the way.
Absolutely heartbreaking. And then, there's a piece when Delia, the character Delia, is dancing in episode 10, and there's a way that you augment it, James, sort of a moment where June is watching Delia dance, and that piece is just so incredibly perfect and haunting. And if Scott or Natasha want to put in the comments what the cues were, but then I just love that. That's a perfect example of the kind of conversation where there was times where we just wanted to boost the source cue a little bit with some score, and there's just something that it just achieves liftoff in such a beautiful way. So those are three great moments in the show. But virtually every cue is a delight for me. I'm curious what Duncan, for you,
Oh yeah, tell us.
I like the can I say artist names?
You can say the
okay
songs.
That Halsey song that we used, end of episode 3.
Yeah.
Funny story about that. I think it was in a bin called "Expensive, Do Not Touch." Don't ever let your editors get into that stuff.
Clearly, I'm not in that bin.
Yeah. And so it was a perfect song.
You went to it.
It was actually it was like I had so many bins open that I didn't actually see the expensive "Do Not Touch" thing, and it was the right song for the right moment, and and I'm glad that you guys coughed up the money for it because it's perfect. And there's a I can't remember the artist name, but
which episode?
I'm thinking of actually the Harry Styles moment was also really cool because I actually didn't even know who Harry Styles was because I'm in my 40s, so that's my excuse. And I was kind of obsessed with that song for a little while actually. A great moment.
That was really funny because we have a Harry Styles song and we were kind of talking about it. And I think I said, if loving Harry Styles is wrong, then I never want to be right again.
Totally. Yeah, I was obsessed with that for a good few weeks, I'd say. And also there's a kind of a fun montage in episode 9. And it's this song that I'm a dreamer, I'm a dreamer, I'm a dreamer.
Yeah.
And it just like, it gave me, like, I was obsessed with it. And I would dance with my son to it when I got home after work.
and that's a musician who is virtually no profile.
I know, and
has virtually no profile. Like you can't really find a lot out about them, but you know that you guys kind of excavated these treasures, these hidden treasures.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, you know, we're mentioning all these Halsey and Harry Styles and stuff, but there's like, we use so much indie artists, lots of Canadian artists, lots of them that I know are on this chat right now. Emily, Noella, Nat J, Steph Copeland, I see you all.
Yeah. Hi, Steph.
And we really tried to be diverse. We also tried to include LGBTQ artists, lots of female artists, lots of diversity. So Harry Styles.
A lot of Canadian artists as well. I mean, the show is set in Chicago, but we really celebrated a lot of Canadian artists on the show. Yeah.
There was a question about why the change between Chicago and New York. Was the original book set in New York?
I'll try and briefly answer that. As a storyteller, this is not music related, so I'll be really quick, but as a storyteller, I'm looking for levels of conflict, as many as possible. And it was more interesting to me to set the show in a world where it's the only ballet school, elite ballet school, professional level ballet school in the city. So that when they leave that world, they're in a different world, that they're strangers in that world. You go into Manhattan and, you know, every third person, you know, pre-pandemic and all that, but every third person is walking around with a dance bag. And it's a world that already, where dance is very familiar. You can leave your bubble and find other like-minded people. And I wanted it to be a world where there was also a real kind of a grit and a sense of industry, a more availability to kind of working class world. So it just helps that on the macro level, you are offering more opportunities to challenge our central characters. So that was a big reason to do it. And also, it helps to focus the world, that there is one feeder school and there's one professional school. Think about it in terms of the Joffrey Ballet. It's a great world-class ballet company that is in Chicago. It has a feeder school, and that is by and large the extent of professional level ballet in the city. And I wanted it to have that kind of compression rather than a world where, you know, there's 6 world-class dance schools and so forth. So it wasn't just done cavalierly, and I'm sorry for fans of the book because they would know it was set in New York, but it was really done to maximize the levels of where we can explore conflict.
Makes sense. Scott, we never got an answer from you as to what your favorite musical moment is.
Oh, so many. Well, I mean, first of all, James wrote an amazing song for one of our actors to sing in a coffee shop scene. that totally hit the mark and was, I think, a real highlight for the
Scott, I owe you $50, man. It's just the way it is.
Just another example of your incredible versatility. And I think, yeah, I guess because I'm a classical nerd, really, I loved being able to get, you know, Benjamin Britten into a Netflix show. And also, you know, contemporary living composers. For me, that's just so satisfying to hear that and to see it work so well with picture. And probably on the source side, I don't know, do you remember Natasha? Someone sent us the song, an unreleased Sophie Tucker song.
Yes.
Called Ballet. And at first, you know, we weren't sure, maybe it's going to be a bit too much on the nose, but I filed it away, and that was one of those in one of my brain folders. And I kind of always had it in the back and was thinking maybe we will find a place for that song because it's fantastic. And so it was, I remember, and just in talking about the beauty of having two like co-supervisors is that you can sort of bounce those wild card ideas off one another and be like, am I crazy to suggest this song for this spot? And because sometimes, you know, it's really nice. I like to throw in a wild card option that maybe plays against picture, and it's not where you would immediately go in your brain when you're looking at the emotional content of the scene or what's happening in the scene. And that was the case for that song, which we did find the perfect spot for. But I was able to say, am I crazy? Remember this song? Should we put it forward? And it worked. So
I think, yeah, that was like the Harry Styles song, which I was already a Harry Styles fan. And you just like, we would put together pitches and you were like, am I crazy? Harry Styles? And I was like, oh my God, of course, it's perfect, you know, but I wouldn't have thought of it. And yeah, that Sophie Tucker song, we kept like kind of batting it back and forth and talking about like, is this too on the nose? Like, what do we do? And then it finally, like at the last moment, was perfect.
Is that the very end of the last episode? Okay, yeah, that was
comment
amazing.
on that. Don't comment on that.
No.
Oh.
I was just trying to place it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the good thing about this show too is there's lots of like big montage moments that have like indie artists. So it's like we're talking about all these big artists, which we have, but we're using some pretty big montage scenes with some of the artists that are even on this call right now. So I'm hoping that what's going to happen is people are going to Shazam all these artists and go and buy their music and become fans of them because, you know, and, you know, also Shazam Harry Styles if you don't know Harry Styles. But I think we're going to wrap up pretty soon. Does anybody on the panel have anything else they want to say before we wrap up? There was like a bunch of questions about, you know, working with classical music and actor and character development and things like that. But I really feel like the people on this panel could talk forever. We're all good talkers. So I think what we're going to do is maybe Michael wants to say something before we end, and then we're going to play the trailer again because we're just going to keep playing it until you can't handle it. Oh, here was one other question for you, Michael, though. Somebody said, when does the second trailer drop?
Ooh.
There won't be. The second trailer is known as the series, and so it's a 10-hour trailer. There definitely is going to be other material being dropped, but in terms of a trailer, it's unlikely that they'll feel the need to do that. And to the fans already watching, like the response to the trailer has been off the charts. Netflix is paying attention. It really matters, and thank you so much for the enthusiasm and the faith that you're putting into us as storytellers, and we promise that we're doing our best to not let you down. I just wanted to circle back to a kind of a theme kind of thing that was coming up earlier in the conversation, which in terms of how do I kind of select the people I want to work with. And I think that partly it is around this idea of the conversation, that I'm as interested in my specific relationship to a composer, to say James, and or to a specific relationship that I might have and a history that I might have with a music supervisor like Natasha, but I'm also really paying attention to their history. If they have an ability, if they have a track record of doing things together, if I feel that, if they don't, if I feel like they're getting each other, because I need to make sure that I'm not going to be around for all the conversations. So I'm just taking the measure of the department as a department and their ability to really cohere. And so that's just something that, you know, in terms of sometimes for people who are, you know, trying to get hired for a job on either side of the music post equation, it often comes down to whether, you know, the people I had on Bomb Girls, for example, Andrea and Peter Chapman and Robert Carley, they had a history together. They'd worked together. I loved and admired them individually, but I also could see that they had a shorthand and a track record and ability to get the job done. And so I think that really behooves us to make those relationships with one another and to not just understand our job in the silo that we do it in, because ultimately it has to be part of a bigger equation.
Well, it just makes everybody's job easier when we're all on the same page. And
absolutely, and so much, you know, I put a lot of stock in those early conversations that we all had, and they were ones that the editors were a part of as well. Just, you know, I really think it's worth it to, when you have the time, well, you never have the time, but you take the time at the beginning to really share ideas, share musical kind of impressions, and to do to the best of our ability to kind of get in the same world, so that when the machine starts to roll and it can be overwhelming, there are those shorthands. We've done the work off the top. There's, you know, one of the things I'm really proud of in this show is that there was very little, I mean, James, it was a handful of times where I would have even the smallest notes per episode on your
I owe you $50 now, man. Jeez.
But I mean, it's largely because of your brilliance, but it's also because
thank you.
did the work off the top to really listen to each other, talk about musical references, so that because there's nothing, and the same goes for the source cues, that there were very rarely where, I mean, there would be circumstances of budget or, you know, a certain episode wants this song, so you guys can't have it. But by and large, we weren't ever having to kind of go back in and crack it open. And those things can be a lot of, it can slow you down, and it can be really dispiriting to the partners. And so, you know, I think it's really important to make sure, for those of you who are working in the music field, to make sure you have what you need to do your best job the first time. And if you're not getting it from your showrunners, work until you get it. Ask for those meetings, ask for those conversations, those clarifications. You know, to toot my own horn, I think I'm a bit able to talk about music, maybe more than many. But if you're working with showrunners who don't know how to talk about music, you have to find a way, because the worst situation you want to be in is one where it's just like, I don't like that. Well, why? You know, and then you're just like going back to the well, and you're slowing down post-production, and you're being frustrated as artists. And so, you know, do what it takes for you to get the information you need to feel confident that you're all on the same page, and do it as early as possible.
That's
Amen.
Really
Amen.
good advice.
and just work for Michael, and then you won't have to worry about any of that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we got to wrap it up, guys. We are going to play the trailer again. It's Tiny Pretty Things is going to be on Netflix on December 14th, so you're all going to binge watch it immediately. Another reminder again to send in your donations to either Black Youth Helpline or Black Mental Health, which we'll put the link up in the chat again. And thank you so much, James, Duncan, Scott, Michael. Looking at all of you, I miss you all. I can't wait for season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of this series. And thank you very much for spending some time today. at our Sound and Vision panel. Everybody else, you can just stay online if you want to stay tuned for the next panel, which is a keynote with composer Amanda Jones and our guild president, Michael Perlmutter. Now, we will leave you now, and you can watch the trailer again. You can also go on YouTube and just watch it over and over again. But otherwise, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And to fans on there,
If a ballerina falls hard. If a ballerina falls hard and nobody's there to catch her. Does she still make a sound?
Nevaeh, Chicago called. They said they didn't want me. Something changed their mind.
Shall we begin? Again from the top.
Welcome, our newest arrival, to the Archer School of Ballet.
Dancing in Cassie Shore's footsteps.
Who's Cassie Shore?
One-star student suffered a fateful misstep.
Misstep. She fell 4 stories.
He's amazing.
Yeah, if you're hot for psychos, you ask me, he pushed her.
This isn't your world, little rat. Knowing the steps doesn't mean you belong.
You best believe I'm coming for you.
There are things that you do not know about this place. Things I've seen.
You think I pushed him? Like all the others.
There is something wrong with that place.
That is not my choreography.
Ballet is no place for redemption.
You have only one thing to do. That is to dance better than anyone else.
I can find the tiny, pretty things you love and tear their wings off.
How the mighty fall.